Thank you all. And now our last session. We all know that Texas is one of the most prosperous states in the country. We've been talking about that all morning. But not everybody was experiencing the benefits of economic growth. And there's heated debate among policymakers about the role that government should play in tackling this inequality and the skills gap. Here to talk about this, Raymund Paredes is the Commissioner of Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and Andres Alcantar, Chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission, the lead workforce development agency in the state. They're joined again by Emily DeRuy. Emily, take it away.
All right, thank you for joining us, both of you. Chairman, if we could start with you. We've heard a lot today about this skills gap.
Sure.
Is that real in your mind? And if so, what is the best way to address it?
Certainly it's real. When you travel the state and when you listen to people all across the country, you understand that industry is making investments. Industry is responding to market conditions, and they're trying to do all that is necessary in order for those companies to be competitive. What we're seeing is a transformation of businesses. The occupations that are doing the work, they're being transformed by the integration of technology. But when we consider that, when we account for the fact that we have the baby boomers aging out, when we look at the expansion of new and emerging industries, it's important that we understand what that means for our communities and that entities work together to make sure that we make our students aware of what those opportunities are, and then work in partnership to create responsive strategies to allow individuals to acquire the skills, both soft and technical, to meet the demands being presented by the changing economy. And in Texas, we're very fortunate that it's expanding and creating wonderful opportunities for these individuals.
Mm-hmm. And Commissioner, I'd love your thoughts on that as well, the skills gap from an education perspective.
Well, there are skill gaps. I think probably an equal problem is that we haven't distributed the skilled people that we have around the state as well as we should. And I think that there are pockets of a shortage of workers in certain parts of the state. We need to find ways to attract skilled workers into those areas. But I think we're doing a much better job in meeting the demand for skilled workers in Texas than we were, say, 20 years ago.
And one of the initiatives sort of aimed at addressing that issue is this 60 by 30 Texas initiative. I was wondering if you could give us an overview of what that is and what the goal is.
60 by 30 was launched last year to succeed closing the gaps, which was our higher education strategic plan that had a life from 2000 to the year 2015. 60 by 30 Texas is intended to make Texas much more competitive at the national and the international level. It has four primary goals. The first, and that's where the name of the initiative comes from, is that by the year 2030, 60% of the youngest cohort of adults in Texas will hold some form of post-secondary credential, whether workforce certificate, associate's degree, or bachelor's degree, or beyond. To give you an idea of what an ambitious goal this is, right now it's the number of young adults in Texas who hold a post-secondary credential is about 38%, which is well below the national average. The second goal is we want to graduate 550,000 people with post-secondary credentials by 2030. Our third goal is we want all of our students to graduate from their post-secondary institution with marketable skills, regardless of major, whether it's engineering, whether it's business, whether it's anthropology, whether it's art history. And then the fourth goal, which might well be the most difficult goal, is we want to hold debt at current levels. You heard in previous sessions that that's one of the most important issues for young people, not only in Texas but around the country. The vast amount of debt that so many college graduates are accumulating during their post-secondary experience. We want to hold debt at current levels. And in order to do that, we're going to have to innovate. We're going to have to make higher education less expensive. We're going to have to advise students better about finishing in a timely fashion. We're going to have to do things like giving students credit for work experiences. We're going to have to move to competency-based instruction, and higher education will look very different in 2030 compared to what it looks like today if we're going to meet these goals.
And when you look at the breakdown by race of where students are in terms of meeting those goals, African Americans are above target in terms of enrolling in college. But when you look at the numbers for Latinos, they're low. What can or what should the state be doing to improve those numbers? What are the challenges there?
We have a lot of programs that are specifically intended to address the underrepresentation of Latino students. We have universities and community colleges that have aggressive outreach programs. We have mentoring programs on our campuses that help students succeed to target Latino students. Latino education rates are going up very fast. They haven't been going up as fast as the population, but that's largely because the Latino population has grown faster in Texas than anybody anticipated 20 years ago. One of the things that's interesting about the demographics of the Latino community is that demographers typically give a median rate for growth or decline of populations. They give a low rate and they give a high rate. And the growth of the Hispanic population in Texas and around the country has always exceeded even the most ambitious projections of what the growth will be. Between 2000 and 2015, Latino enrollments in our public institutions of higher education increased about 110%, and completions, and I consider completions to be more important than enrollments, increased by 150%. So I think we're on track. If you look at the historical data about immigrant groups, and a large percentage of Latinos in Texas are immigrants. If you look at the literature on immigrants, you see that in the third generation, you start to see an acceleration of educational attainment. That happened to the Italians, it happened to the Irish, it happened to the Eastern European Jews. It came at the end of the 19th century, and I think we're seeing that with Latinos, and I think we'll see a significant acceleration in Latino educational attainment over the next 15 years.
Chairman, I'd love your thoughts on whether this plan, this 60 by 30 Texas plan, will impact business in Texas at all, and then also what role government should play in either helping businesses offer training programs or helping businesses send students to college, whether there is a role.
Well, I'm certainly a strong supporter of 60 by 30 Texas. I think it's a very visionary plan. The goals are something that I strongly endorse. The focus on making sure that all of our students that pursue a post-secondary opportunity have a marketable skill is something that we really are going to try to support and advance. There are different ways that we can go about that objective, and I think many of them hold promise. The focus on making sure that there is alignment with what is happening out there is very critical, not only for this state, but for the country. And so when we examine things like 60 by 30 Texas, the focus is on the right things, and it's something that aligns with much of the work that we're doing at TWC. The focus on making sure that we have good pathways will support that. And by that I mean when our kids are in our middle schools, they already have a strong foundation. We work together to inspire these students about the different opportunities that are available across the different industries here in our state. There are effective ways to do that, and there are very good objective ways to do it. And in doing it in an objective way that highlights what the learning means in terms of its relevance, that's an objective that we are trying to advance as we work through our partnerships to do this. And partnerships are the key to getting this done, making sure that we're working with industry, with our counselors in our middle schools and our high schools, with the educators, because they touch our students on a daily basis, giving them a better understanding of what these opportunities are that are being created by the different industries in Texas is so important. And then making sure that we provide them with unique opportunities to begin to understand that they too can be it. So you inspire, you provide the relevance in terms of the different coursework that is being pursued, in terms of the endorsements that we have in Texas, and then making sure that industry is a partner in that in terms of providing mentoring, interning, and other opportunities, while at the same time helping us launch community-based approaches that allow us to touch these kids on a more consistent basis and help inform their choices along the way. The curriculum is also important. It has to reflect the changes that are occurring in the marketplace, and that is so critical to having our students graduate with the skills that are going to generate a strong return on the investment over time. How do we, the second part of your question was, how do we make sure that our students...
And I
think I'm
blanking on the second part of
the
question as well, so we can move on.
I think the second part is, how do we make sure that our students are, that our industry is working with students in an effective way?
Right, or what can government do to help businesses connect with students, and what should that role be?
Well, the first role of government is to create an environment where job creation can occur, and we have that in Texas. The second one is to make sure that the policies support innovation and creativity, and I think the role that we have in inducing those types of partnerships is something that is very much necessary. Mm-hmm. And I think we can then get out of the way. We provide the basis for formulating these partnerships around information, around mentoring, around curriculum, and then we allow local communities, these independent bodies, to come together to formulate strategies and solutions that make sense for that community based on their dominant industries and the growth potential for each of these areas of the state. We then make sure that the state policies support that flexibility that is so critical for our communities to evolve and develop in a way that responds to the market conditions that are possible.
Got it. And Commissioner, we've talked about various investments in higher education at the city and state level, but when you look around the state in places like San Antonio, they're making investments in the early years, in the preschool years. Love your sense on sort of where the investments are most critical, where funds are best used.
We have to make investments throughout the educational pipeline. There are points of leakage, significant attrition, all through the pipeline. We know that there are a very large number of young people, pre-K, first grade, that come to school unprepared to do well in school. They don't have the vocabulary skills. They haven't been exposed to books very much, as opposed to children often from affluent families who do have those skills. We begin to see significant attrition in middle school in the 8th grade. We obviously don't send nearly as many as students to colleges and universities as we would like. About 52-53% of high school graduates in Texas go on to higher education. The highest achieving states, about 2/3 of high school graduates go to college. We have significant attrition throughout the higher education pipeline. We have to do a much better job with retention. Our 6-year graduation rates at our universities are a tick under 60%, which is right at the national average. Our community colleges have a long way to go in terms of completion rates. Our 3-year completion rates for 2-year programs in community colleges is under 15%. So we can't focus on just one sector. We have to support the entire educational pipeline.
Do you think that the state at the moment is putting enough funding toward higher education? Whenever I'm sort of on the ground in Texas at various community colleges and universities, funding or lack of funding comes up a lot, especially for some of these 2-year programs that serve students from less advantaged backgrounds who may have a more challenging array of needs.
Well, higher education leaders would clearly say that the answer is no, that we don't fund higher education at appropriate levels. I would discriminate a little bit more in answering the question. I think that we probably underfund community colleges, two-year institutions, more than we do universities. And my particular view is, since we don't have control over what the legislature does about appropriations to higher education, is we simply have to take the attitude that we're going to do better with whatever resources we have. And I'm convinced that we can do much better with current levels of resources.
Got it. And in a moment, we'll begin to take questions. And if you can, at that time, just stand up and introduce yourself and wait until you have a microphone. But while you guys think of your questions, I'll ask one final question here. Chairman, in terms of businesses working with schools to develop curriculum, we've spoken about this in the previous panels, but there are some concerns there about businesses dictating curriculum and what that process looks like. Is that a concern for you?
It is not a concern for me. It's critical that they have a seat at the table. When we're talking about the ultimate outcome, well, first thing is we want kids to pursue their dreams, to get inspired, to understand why they've made a choice. We then want them to complete. We want to make sure that as we provide and develop a pathway for completion, that there is a focus on these reforms that are so important, competency-based learning for our veterans, so that they don't have to repeat work that they've already, or redo coursework that they've already done during their time in service. And we're doing a lot here in Texas through College Credit for Heroes. We want to make sure that as they progress and complete, that when they do graduate, that the skills that they've acquired in these computer science and these technical programs really reflect the changing nature of what is happening in industry. It would be so unfortunate if if kids struggled and persevered, had to go work and come back, and then they finally complete, and the curriculum reflected in the coursework does not match up with the skills that are needed for immediate placement in those occupations that are being created. So it's essential that they're there. There's some really good models where we have the involvement of industry, like our Western Governors University, Texas. We do a lot of work with our community colleges and technical schools to really market or to reflect what is needed in the marketplace within those different programs. And certainly when we're building these career technical programs that involve dual credit and early college, it's essential that, again, that the investment that is being made in equipment mirrors what is occurring out in the marketplace. So it goes beyond the curriculum. There's other real significant investment that is being made, and the training for our teachers needs to reflect and align with these changes in industry. And anything that we can do towards those objectives really will benefit the overall placement outcomes, and I believe completion rates long-term for students as they pursue these opportunities.
Got it. And we have time for a couple of questions here. Does anybody have a question?
And before we go to our in-person audience, we actually have a quick question from one of the viewers of our live stream who sent us a question via Twitter. So it's a quick one. Does everyone need to go to college?
I'll answer that. Well, the answer is obvious. Not everybody goes to college, so it's such a phony question. I'm unaware of any initiative anywhere in this country, any time in its history, where everybody was expected to go to college. 53% of our high school graduates go to college. That's hardly a relevant question in that context. The answer is no, and there's no reason to fear that is likely to occur.
I would only add that the outcomes for individuals that pursue and complete a baccalaureate degree, an associate's degree, an industry-recognized credential will be highly rewarded in the marketplace. The levels of employment will be greater for those that have those credentials. The levels of unemployment will be higher for those that don't have a post-secondary credential. It doesn't mean that you have to get a 4-year degree. It could be a 2-year degree. It could be a 1-year program. It could be a shorter term certificate. But your outcomes will be better if you pursue and complete those. We need to do a better job of creating a culture of inspiration and completion. And the results really have been documented over time, whether the economy is expanding or during recessions, those that do not complete, that are not credentialed, will have higher levels of unemployment than those that do. And the earnings over time will be greater for those that are credentialed on average than those that do not.
And the data on that are unmistakable. The evidence is conclusive that the more education you have, the less susceptible you are to being laid off, your income is better, your quality of life is better. So there's no doubt that getting a higher education is valuable to individuals, but we're not anywhere close to the point where we have to worry about whether too many people are going to college.
We probably have time for one question in the room if anybody has one.
Hi, I'm Amethyst Mavash, and I'm with Caritas of Austin. I work with the employment program. Some of the individuals we serve do not have the English level to be able to participate in skills training, vocational training, and workforce training, but they have a strong desire to do that. Do you know of any existing programs that offer these opportunities, or do you see an increase of these opportunities in different languages in the horizon?
One of the things that we're trying to do through our adult education literacy program, and we're already doing it, but we're going to try to do more of it, is to build these integrated models where we have skills attainment as a part of the literacy efforts underway, so that it's not a linear process where you go out there and get your equivalent and then you pursue a skill or a credential in these high demand occupations. It's occurring concurrently. We need to have more of these efficient models where when we are able to get people into a seat, that we're doing 2 things or 3 things at the same time: soft skills, literacy, and technical skills that have currency in the marketplace. That's what we're trying to expand. We have some good examples out there, partnerships with the coordinating board in terms of Accelerate Texas is a prime example of that work. Is there anything you would add, Commissioner?
No, I think that those kinds of efforts are absolutely critical. We also have a program called Grad Texas where we try to re-enroll students who have accumulated, say, 50, 60, 70 hours of college credit but never graduated, never finished either a degree or their credential. We want those students to have an opportunity to get back into higher education and finish. We have tens of thousands of students or people like that in Texas. We're working every part of our higher education challenges. We count certificates, workforce certificates, as being just as valuable as academic credentials, associate's degrees, baccalaureate degrees. We're trying to meet the needs of the Texas economy in a way that will raise our economic competitiveness and improve quality of life in Texas.
I'll go ahead and wrap things up with one final question. We've talked about policies and initiatives at the state level and the local level. At the national level, there's been a recent push, not only toward four-year schools, but to connect low-income, mostly students of color, with opportunities, with higher education. Things like the college scorecard, giving students access to ratings and salary information. With varying degrees of success. Are you supportive of those types of initiatives, and what role would you like the federal government to be playing in terms of connecting students with opportunity in Texas?
We are very actively involved in any number of initiatives to enroll larger numbers of poor children in higher education programs. One of the tragedies of higher education, not only in Texas but around the country, is that education throughout the pipeline, K through 12, higher education, is no longer an engine of social and economic mobility. In fact, what education does typically is entrench social and economic disparities, and we have to go back to the model, for example, after World War II, where the GI Bill led to the longest and most intense period of prosperity in the history of the world. We have to recover higher education as a way to help poor people get into well-paying jobs in the workforce. Right now, Texas is 42nd among states and access by poor children into higher education. We obviously have to change that.
Well, certainly for us, we're involved in a number of initiatives to spur the interest of our students, to really engage them. We are partnering with the industry to build summer camps at our colleges and universities, and we really host and have developed a number of unique opportunities for students so that they can see themselves on campus, see themselves in a program that is industry aligned, like aerospace, like the geosciences, like technology. We work to attract students from that are first generation, that represent different groups, so that they can have better appreciation for what work needs to be done from that point moving forward. We've worked to develop and create a culture where we value things like robotics in our schools. In addition to the athletic accomplishments, we want academic accomplishment to be recognized in our classrooms and be a part of a movement. So we've partnered with a number of groups on BEST and FIRST and other events where we're bringing together industry, our science teachers, our mentors in our school with these students from different backgrounds. Students from different backgrounds coming together to jointly develop dreams and aspirations, and then having a good understanding of what they need to do. And then the information that we make available through our career fairs and those sponsored events where we provide, again, this subjective snapshot of what is possible for these students are so important. Obviously, the strong foundations in the early years will make will be a strong determining factor in terms of how successful all those efforts are. But as the commissioner shared, we're focused on making sure that our kids are becoming exposed to a stronger early learning environment with higher quality. We're working to make sure that our middle years have the appropriate focus, and that when the endorsement selections are made and the post-secondary options examined, the students are operating with a good base of information. It's going to require a lot of work, but it's being done in partnership here in Texas. 3 agencies working together with our local partners to make sure that we support these local efforts. And the final part of your question, Washington can be involved to the extent that they are involved here. If they're going to invest, allow the states to make the choices in terms of how those dollars are invested, because the way we do it here in Texas is we take those investments and work with our local partners to make sure that local priorities in terms of what they're trying to invest in and leverage are leveraged with these other dollars that may become available. So that's the best way to do it, is let the states decide, working in partnership with our local communities to create momentum in our regions all across the state.
Well, thank you very much both for joining us.
Thank
and
you.
we'll hand it back to Margaret now.
Thank you.